The red dust never settled on Kepler 442b. It hung in the air like blood, coating everything in a thin layer of rust that made every breath taste like iron. Taemin pulled his mask tighter against his face as he walked through the mining camp. The workers around him moved like ghosts, their faces hidden behind protective gear, their bodies bent from years of hard labor. The sun was setting, painting the barren landscape in shades of orange and crimson. In the distance, massive drilling. Machines carved into the planet's surface, their metal teeth grinding through rock and soil in search of the precious metals that the Galactic Empire demanded. The sound was constant, a mechanical heartbeat that never stopped, never rested. Taemin had been the mining supervisor on this forgotten world for 3 years now. Before that, he had been an engineer on Earth, back when Earth still mattered. Back when humans still had hope. That was before the Empire came. Before they decided that humanity was useful only for the work that other species found too dangerous or too dirty. He stopped at the edge of Mine Shaft 7, the deepest excavation on the planet. The workers called it the Throat because it seemed to swallow everything that went down into it. Men, machines, hope. Everything disappeared into its dark depths. Taemin checked his tablet, reviewing the daily reports. Production was down, again. The drills were hitting something harder than usual, something that resisted their cutting tools. "Supervisor Taemin!" a voice called from behind him. He turned to see Dongwu approaching, his safety helmet tucked under his arm. Dongwu was different from the other workers. He had a fire in his eyes that the Empire hadn't managed to extinguish, yet. He also had a dangerous habit of asking questions. "What is it, Dongwu?" Taemin asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. The Empire had ears everywhere, and conversations that sounded too much like complaints had a way of making people disappear. "The drills in Shaft 7 hit something strange today," Dongwu said quietly, stepping closer. "Not rock, not metal, something else. The energy readings are off the charts." Taemin frowned. Energy readings weren't supposed to be part of a mining operation. They dug for metals and minerals, nothing more. "Show me the data." They walked to the portable control station set up near the mine entrance. Dongwu pulled up the sensor readings on the main screen. Taemin studied the numbers, his engineer's mind trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The energy signature was unlike anything he had encountered before. Too regular to be natural, too sophisticated to be accidental. "How deep were you when you hit this?" Taemin asked. 800 meters. But here's the strange part. The signature gets stronger. The deeper we go, it's like there's something down there, something big. Taemin stared at the screen. During his years on Earth, before the Empire's arrival, he had worked on experimental energy systems. The readings looked familiar, almost like the theoretical power sources they had been developing in the early days of humanity's space program. But that was impossible. Earth's technology had been primitive compared to the Empire's advanced systems. At least that's what everyone believed. Across the camp, in a small prefabricated building that served as the communications center, So Young was having her own moment of discovery. She had been studying the Empire's faster-than-light travel systems for months, using her position as the colony's technical support specialist to access data that should have been far above her clearance level. What she had found troubled her. The Empire's FTL technology was flawed, not just inefficient, but fundamentally unstable. The energy patterns showed stress fractures that grew worse with each jump. It was like watching a dam develop cracks. Eventually, it would fail catastrophically. What puzzled her was why no one else seemed to notice. The Empire had been using this technology for thousands of years. How had they missed such obvious problems? So Young pulled up another data file, this one containing theoretical calculations she had been working on in secret. If her math was correct, there was a way to exploit these flaws, a way to turn the Empire's greatest strength into its greatest weakness. But it would require technology that humanity supposedly didn't possess. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime from her communication console. An incoming message, but the signal was strange. It wasn't using Empire frequencies or protocols. The transmission was old, almost ancient, using encryption methods that predated the Empire's arrival on Earth. With trembling fingers, So Young began to decode the message. As the words appeared on her screen, her heart began to race. The message was simple, but its implications were staggering. Children of Earth, the time of silence is ending. Prepare yourselves. The home you thought was lost remembers you still. Meanwhile, in the worker barracks, Hye-jin was conducting her own secret activities. As the colony's communications specialist, she had access to the Empire's data networks. What her supervisors didn't know was that she had been intercepting and recording their transmissions for over a year. The Empire officials talked as if humans couldn't understand their language, as if they were too primitive to comprehend the conversations happening around them. They were wrong. Hye-jin spoke 4 galactic languages fluently and could read 3 others well enough to understand technical documents. Tonight, she had intercepted something particularly interesting, a communication between the sector governor and his military, advisors about unusual human activity in several mining colonies. The message mentioned increased energy readings, technological anomalies, and concerns about coordinated resistance activities. What struck Hye-jin as odd was the tone of the messages. The Empire officials sounded worried, almost afraid. They had ruled the galaxy for millennia, crushing dozens of species beneath their boots. What could possibly make them afraid of a few human mining colonies? She was about to dig deeper into the transmission logs when her door chimed. She quickly shut down her equipment and opened the door to find Dong-woo standing in the hallway, his face excited but cautious. "Hye-jin, I need you to look at something," he said quietly, "but not here. Too many ears." They met an hour later in the abandoned maintenance shed C, a building that had been damaged in a dust storm and never repaired. Dong-woo showed her the energy readings from Mine Shaft 7, explaining what they had discovered. "This doesn't look like mining equipment," Hye-jin said after studying the data. "These energy patterns are too complex, too advanced." "That's what I thought," Dong-woo replied. "But there's more. I've been talking to workers from other colonies. They're all reporting similar discoveries. Strange energy signatures, unusual materials, technology that doesn't match anything in the Empire databases." Hye-jin felt a chill run down her spine. "How many colonies?" "At least 12 that I know of. Maybe more." They sat in silence for a moment, the implications sinking in. 12 colonies, all discovering the same anomalies. It couldn't be a coincidence. "Dong-woo," Hye-jin said slowly, "what if the Empire didn't put us on these worlds to punish us? What if they put us here because of what was already buried underneath?" Before he could answer, Hye-jin's personal communicator buzzed. She looked at the display and froze. It was the same type of ancient signal that So-young had received, using the same prehistoric encryption methods. With shaking hands, she decoded the message. "The children of Earth are not forgotten. The seeds planted long ago are ready to bloom. Prepare for contact. Prepare for truth." As the two humans stared at the message, neither of them realized that similar messages were being received in mining colonies across the galaxy. The Empire had made a critical error 2 centuries ago. They had assumed that Earth's silence meant Earth's death. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. The transmission came at exactly 0300 hours, when the night shift was at its quietest. Tae-min was alone in the control room, monitoring the automated systems, when every screen suddenly went dark. For a moment, he thought it was another power failure. Then the screens flickered back to life, showing something impossible. Earth. The blue marble that humanity had called home, floating in space exactly as he remembered it. But this wasn't a recording from the archives. The timestamp showed the current date, and the image was crystal clear, far sharper than anything the Empire's surveillance systems could produce. A face appeared on the screen. A man with graying hair and steady eyes, wearing a uniform that Tae-min didn't recognize but somehow knew was human military. "My name is Admiral Ki-jun of the Terran Defense Force," the man said, his voice carrying across the vast distances between worlds. "If you are receiving this transmission, then you are one of our people, scattered across the galaxy, but never forgotten." Taemin's hands trembled as he reached for the recording controls. This had to be documented, preserved, shared. "For 200 years, the galaxy has believed that Earth fell to the Empire," Admiral Ki-jun continued. "They believe we surrendered, that we accepted defeat and exile. They are wrong. Earth stands free, Earth grows stronger, and Earth remembers every single one of her children. The image shifted, showing vast shipyards in space around Earth, filled with vessels unlike anything Taemin had ever seen. The ships were sleek and powerful, bearing no resemblance to the crude, bulky designs the Empire favored. They moved with impossible grace, their hulls shimmering with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. "What you have been finding in the mines is not accident," the Admiral said. 2 centuries ago, when the Empire first demanded our surrender, we made a choice. We would appear to give them what they wanted while preparing for the day when we would take back what was ours. The screen showed technical diagrams now, blueprints of devices that had been buried deep beneath the surfaces of dozens of worlds. The energy signatures matched exactly what they had found in Mineshaft 7. "Every mining colony sits above a weapons cache," Ki-jun explained. "Every human settlement is positioned at a strategic point in space. Every world where our people toil in apparent slavery contains the tools of the Empire's destruction." Timon felt his world shift beneath his feet. The mining colonies weren't punishment. They were preparation. The Empire hadn't scattered humanity across the galaxy to break them. They had unknowingly placed human agents at every vital point in their territory. Meanwhile, in her communications center, So-Young was receiving a different kind of revelation. Her screens showed technical specifications that made her engineering background sing with recognition. The Empire's FTL drives weren't just flawed, they had been deliberately sabotaged from within. The woman on her screen introduced herself as Nari, Chief of Advanced Weapons Division. Her workspace was filled with holographic displays showing Empire fleet movements, their ship's technical specifications, and detailed analyses of their weaknesses. "Every major Empire shipyard has human workers," Nari explained. "Every critical system has been touched by human hands. We have spent 2 centuries learning their technology, improving upon it, and preparing surprises they cannot imagine." So-Young watched in amazement as Nari demonstrated how simple modifications to FTL drive components could cause catastrophic failures. The changes were so subtle that Empire technicians would never notice them until it was too late. "Your theoretical work on FTL improvements has reached us," Nari continued, addressing So-Young directly. "Your calculations were correct. There is indeed a better way, and we have built it. When the time comes, the Empire will find that their fastest ships are slower than our cargo vessels." The transmission included detailed plans for devices that So-Young could build using materials available in the mining colony. Transmitters that could coordinate with Earth's forces, weapons that could disable Empire equipment, and shields that could protect human settlements from orbital bombardment. In the Empire's regional headquarters, Commander Wu Jin was having the most dangerous conversation of his life. For 30 years, he had served the Empire faithfully, rising through their military ranks, earning their trust. They had no idea that he had been born on Earth, that his parents had smuggled him off-world as a child to begin the longest intelligence operation in human history. His secure communicator buzzed with an incoming message from home. The encryption was so advanced that it appeared to be random static to Empire monitoring systems. But to Wu Jin, it was the signal he had been waiting for his entire adult life. "Phase 2 is beginning," the message read. "Activate all sleeper assets. Begin psychological operations. Make them doubt their own strength." Wu Jin smiled grimly. Around the galaxy, dozens of humans like him were receiving the same orders. They had spent decades infiltrating Empire institutions, military commands, research facilities, government offices, even the Imperial Guard itself. The Empire had been thoroughly penetrated without ever knowing it. He began composing orders that would be issued through official Empire channels, equipment malfunctions in key systems, navigation errors that would scatter fleets across empty space, communication failures that would isolate Empire commanders from their subordinates at critical moments. Far from the mining colonies, Captain Sun He commanded a ship that officially didn't exist. The Deep Space Reconnaissance Corps had been operating in the void between stars for 50 years, mapping Empire defenses, studying their patrol patterns, and preparing for the day when Earth would reveal its true strength. Her ship, invisible to Empire sensors, watched as an Empire battle. Fleet conducted training exercises. The alien crews had no idea they were being observed, that every tactical maneuver was being recorded and analyzed. "Captain," her tactical officer reported. "Earth Command has authorized Phase 2 protocols. We are cleared to begin active operations." Sun He nodded. Around the galaxy, dozens of ships like hers were receiving the same authorization. The reconnaissance phase was ending. The preparation phase was beginning. "Target their command ship," she ordered. "Minimum damage, maximum confusion. I want them to think they're experiencing system failures, not sabotage." The invisible human ship fired a single pulse of directed energy. The Empire command vessel immediately began experiencing problems. Communications went down, navigation systems provided contradictory readings, and their main computer started issuing random orders to the fleet. As the Empire ships scattered in confusion, trying to determine what had gone wrong, Sun He allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. This was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, Empire forces would begin experiencing similar malfunctions with increasing frequency. Back on Kepler 442b, the secret messages had spread through the human population like wildfire. In hidden meetings in abandoned buildings, in whispered conversations in mine shafts, in coded transmissions between colonies, the truth was finally being revealed. Dongwu had become the unofficial coordinator for their world, organizing the workers into cells that could operate independently but coordinate their actions. The discovery in Mine Shaft 7 had been just the beginning. Other shafts had yielded similar treasures, weapons, communication devices, and equipment that could turn a mining colony into a fortress. "How many people know?" Tae-min asked during one of their secret meetings. "Everyone," Hyejin replied. "The word has spread to every human on this world, and according to the communications I've been monitoring, it's the same on every colony world." "The Empire doesn't suspect?" Dongwu shook his head. "They see what they expect to see. Tired workers going through the motions. They have no idea that every human in the galaxy now knows the truth." As the meeting broke up, each person returning to their official duties to maintain the illusion of normal colony life, none of them noticed the small drone that had been observing them from the shadows. But the drone wasn't Empire technology. It bore the subtle markings of Earth's intelligence services, and its purpose was not to spy on the colonists, but to protect them. Admiral Ki-jun had been thorough in his preparations. Every human settlement was now under the discreet protection of Earth's forces. When the time came to reveal the truth to the galaxy, Earth's children would be ready. The Empire had made the greatest mistake in their long history. They had given humanity 2 centuries to prepare, and they had scattered them across every vital point in their territory. Soon, they would learn the price of underestimating the children of Earth. The message went out across the galaxy at exactly 1200 hours, Galactic Standard Time. Every Empire communication channel, every military frequency, every civilian broadcast network suddenly carried the same signal. Emergency override codes that should have been impossible for humans to possess activated screens in government buildings, military bases, and private homes across thousands of worlds. On Kepler 442b, Tae-min and the other colonists gathered around their work screens as the transmission began. The image was crystal clear. A man in his 50s, wearing a simple black uniform with no ornate decorations, standing in what appeared to be a government office on Earth. Behind him, through large windows, they could see the blue skies and green forests of humanity's homeworld. "Citizens of the galaxy," the man began, his voice calm but carrying absolute authority. "My name is Jae-ho, Prime Minister of the Terran Republic. For 200 years, you have been told that Earth fell to the Empire, that humanity accepted defeat and exile. Today, you learn the truth." On the Empire capital world of Vorthak, Sector Governor Yoon Seo watched the transmission with growing horror. Her emergency staff crowded around the main display, their alien faces showing confusion and fear. This was impossible. The humans had no access to Empire communication systems, no way to override their security protocols. "How are they doing this?" she demanded. Her communications officer, a tall reptilian being named Sketh, worked frantically at his console. "The signal is coming from everywhere at once. Every relay station, every satellite, every communication hub in the Empire is broadcasting this simultaneously." Prime Minister Jae-ho continued his address. The Empire made a critical error when they scattered humanity across the galaxy. They believed they were punishing us, weakening us by separation. Instead, they placed us exactly where we needed to be. The image shifted, showing a holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots appeared at the locations of human settlements: mining, colonies, labor camps, research stations, and industrial worlds. The dots formed a perfect network that covered every major shipping lane, every critical resource system, every strategic choke point in Empire space. Every human settlement sits at a vital point in your empire, Jeho explained. Every mining operation extracts materials that your fleets require. Every labor camp produces goods that your worlds depend upon. Every research station gathers intelligence that your military needs. You made us the foundation of your empire, and now we will show you what happens when that foundation chooses to crumble. Governor Yoon Seo felt her throat tighten. The human was right. The Empire had indeed placed human settlements at critical locations, thinking only of efficiency and control. They had never considered what would happen if those settlements turned hostile. The transmission continued with footage from Earth itself, massive shipyards in orbit around the planet, filled with vessels that looked nothing like Empire designs. Cities that sparkled with technology the Empire had never seen. Military formations that moved with precision and power that made the Empire's best forces look primitive. While you believed us broken, we grew stronger, Jeho said. While you thought us primitive, we advanced beyond your comprehension. While you assumed us defeated, we prepared for this moment. In the Empire's 7th Fleet, Admiral Zorthan watched the broadcast from his flagship's command bridge. His crew of various alien species stood frozen, staring at displays showing human technology that seemed decades ahead of their own capabilities. "Sir," his tactical officer whispered, "should we go to alert status?" Zorthan was about to answer when new contacts appeared on his sensors. Ships were materializing around his fleet, human ships that had somehow approached without being detected. The vessels were sleek and elegant, their hulls seeming to bend light around them in impossible ways. "This is Captain Byung-ho of the Terran vessel Indomitable," a voice announced over the fleet's communication system. "You are ordered to power down your weapons and withdraw from this system immediately." Zorthan looked at his tactical display. His fleet consisted of 12 heavy battleships, the pride of the Empire's military. The human ship appeared to be alone, much smaller than his flagship. "Human vessel," Zorthan replied, his voice full of confidence. "You are outnumbered 12-1. Withdraw or be destroyed." "Admiral," Byung-ho's voice carried what sounded almost like pity, "you have been warned." The Indomitable fired once. A beam of pure energy lanced out from the human ship, striking Zorthan's flagship. The massive warship simply vanished, disintegrated at the molecular level in the space of a heartbeat. No explosion. No debris field, just empty space where a kilometer-long battleship had been moments before. The remaining 11 ships of the fleet immediately powered down their weapons. Back on the galactic broadcast, Prime Minister Jeho was outlining humanity's terms. "The Terran Republic hereby declares the independence of all human settlements throughout the galaxy. All Empire forces will withdraw from human space immediately. All human labor camps will be converted to free colonies. All resources extracted by human workers will now belong to humanity." Governor Yoon Seo found her voice. "This is madness. Even if they have advanced technology, they cannot possibly challenge the entire empire. We have millions of ships, billions of soldiers across thousands of worlds." Her military advisor, General Claxon, was studying tactical reports that were streaming in from across the empire. His expression grew more concerned with each update. "Governor, I'm receiving reports of equipment failures throughout our fleets. Communication breakdowns, navigation errors, weapon malfunctions. It's happening everywhere at once. Our people need time to consider these demands," Jeho continued from Earth. "Therefore, we grant the Empire 72 hours to begin compliance with our terms. Failure to do so will result in the complete dismantling of your galactic government and military forces." The transmission ended with a final image that sent chills through every Empire leader watching. It was Earth, but not as they remembered it. The planet was surrounded by a defensive grid that made their most powerful fortresses look like toys. Ships moved in perfect formation around massive space stations that bristled with weapons of unknown design. 72 hours, J-Ho repeated as the broadcast concluded. Choose wisely. In his hidden command center on the Empire world of Nexus 7, Wu Jin received final confirmation that Phase 3 was now active. Around him, Empire officers who had trusted him for decades continued their duties, unaware that their most reliable commander was humanity's most valuable asset. He began issuing orders that would appear routine to casual observation, but would systematically disrupt Empire military coordination. Fleets would be sent to patrol empty systems. Supply convoys would be rerouted away from critical battles. Communication networks would experience random failures at the worst possible moments. On distant worlds, other sleeper agents like Wu Jin were doing the same thing. The Empire's military machine was being subtly dismantled from within by the very people they had trusted to run it. Meanwhile, diplomatic courier Yunji was already en route to the Empire capital aboard a ship that officially didn't exist. Her mission was to deliver humanity's formal terms directly to the Imperial Council, giving them one last chance to avoid total war. Her ship passed through Empire patrols as if they weren't there, invisible to their sensors and immune to their attempts at interception. When she finally arrived at Vorthak, landing directly in the Imperial Palace without being challenged, the Empire leadership finally began to understand the scope of their problem. Honorable Council members, Yunji said as she stood before the assembled leaders of the galactic government, I bring you greetings from the free worlds of humanity and an opportunity to avoid the complete destruction of your empire. The ancient beings who ruled the galaxy looked at this young human woman with a mixture of fear and disbelief. She had somehow penetrated the most secure location in their territory, had delivered weapons that could destroy their finest ships, and was now offering them terms for surrender. What makes you think we would negotiate with terrorists? The Imperial Chancellor demanded. Yunji smiled sadly. Because in 71 hours and 37 minutes, you will no longer have an empire to govern. The question before you now is whether your people will survive its fall. As she spoke, reports continued to stream in from across the galaxy. Human settlements were revealing weapons that had been hidden for generations. Empire fleets were experiencing massive system failures. Communication networks were breaking down as human technicians abandoned their posts or actively sabotaged critical systems. The Empire faced a choice that no galactic government had confronted in 1,000 years. They could negotiate with the humans, or they could fight a war against an enemy that had spent 2 centuries preparing for this exact moment. The countdown to humanity's ultimatum had begun, and across the galaxy, both sides prepared for what might be the final conflict in galactic history. The Empire chose war. 72 hours after humanity's ultimatum, Imperial Chancellor Vex Thor stood before the Galactic Council and declared that the Empire would never bow to human demands. His words were broadcast across the galaxy, carried by the same communication networks that humans had used to deliver their warning. We have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, the Chancellor announced, his voice filled with ancient pride. We will not be intimidated by a species that we graciously allowed to survive. The humans will learn their place, or they will be eliminated entirely. Within minutes of the declaration, the Empire's war machine began to move. Thousands of ships left their bases, heading toward human settlements with orders to crush the rebellion completely. The Imperial fleet was massive, over 50,000 warships supported by countless smaller vessels, carrying enough firepower to sterilize entire solar systems. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Sang Woo watched the Empire's response from his command center deep beneath the Himalayas. Holographic displays showed the movement of every Empire ship, their courses and destinations tracked by humanity's invisible reconnaissance network. They're committing everything, his tactical officer reported. Every major fleet, every reserve unit, every planetary defense force. They want to end this quickly. Sang Woo nodded calmly. They still don't understand. They think this is about numbers. He turned to his communications officer. Signal all units. Operation Thunderstrike is now active. Across the galaxy, human forces that had remained hidden for 2 centuries finally revealed themselves. What the Empire had thought were mining colonies suddenly bristled with weapons that had been disguised as industrial equipment. What they had believed were defenseless settlements activated shields that could withstand orbital bombardment. The first major engagement occurred at the Altair system, where a human research station was supposedly studying stellar phenomena. The Empire's Third Fleet, consisting of over 400 ships, dropped out of hyperspace expecting to find an easy target. Instead, they found Captain Minna waiting for them. Her single ship, the Defiance, hung in space like a silver needle against the dark. It was beautiful and deadly, its hull covered in patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living metal. The Empire Fleet Commander, Admiral Tekvar, laughed when he saw it. "One ship," he said to his bridge crew. "They send one ship against 400. "Admiral," his sensor officer reported nervously, "I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from that vessel." "It doesn't matter what weapons they have," Tekvar declared. "Concentrate all fire on that ship. Destroy it." 400 Empire warships opened fire simultaneously. The space around the Defiance filled with energy beams, plasma bolts, and guided missiles. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. When the light faded, the Defiance remained exactly where it had been, completely undamaged. Its shields had absorbed the entire barrage without even flickering. "Impossible," Tekvar whispered. Minna's voice came across the communication channels, calm and professional. "Your weapons are 2 centuries out of date, Admiral. Allow me to demonstrate current technology." The Defiance fired once, a single pulse of energy that seemed to bend space itself around it. The pulse struck the Empire flagship and passed through it like it was made of paper. The massive ship simply fell apart, its molecular bonds dissolved by weapons that worked on principles the Empire couldn't comprehend. "All Empire vessels," Minna announced. "You have 10 seconds to surrender or withdraw. I will not warn you again." 399 Empire ships immediately turned and fled the system. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as human forces revealed their true capabilities. In the Vega sector, a single human destroyer eliminated an entire Empire battle group in less than 5 minutes. Near the galactic core, human stealth ships appeared inside Empire formations, disabling their targets without firing a shot. But humanity's greatest advantage wasn't their technology, it was their strategy. For 2 centuries, they had been preparing not just weapons, but tactics that would turn the Empire's strength against itself. Commander Hosiak led one of the most crucial operations of the war. His team of infiltration specialists had spent decades placing themselves in key positions throughout Empire space. Now, as the Empire's fleets moved toward human targets, Hosiak's people activated sleeper programs that had been waiting for this moment. Empire ships suddenly found their navigation systems sending them to empty regions of space. Communication networks began broadcasting false orders that split fleets apart and sent them chasing phantom targets. Supply convoys disappeared as their human crews simply vanished, taking vital resources with them. Most devastating of all was the discovery that Empire weapons couldn't function properly without human-made components. For generations, human workers in Empire factories had been secretly modifying critical parts, installing hidden switches that could disable weapon systems remotely. As Empire fleets prepared for battle, their weapons simply stopped working. On the fortress world of Kepler Station, the Empire made its most desperate stand. General Zarthek had assembled over 2,000 ships and declared that the rebellion would end there. His forces surrounded the human colony, preparing to demonstrate Empire power by destroying it completely. The human defenders were led by a woman the Empire had dismissed as unimportant, Jiwan, who had been listed in their records as a technical specialist. What they didn't know was that Jiwan commanded humanity's most closely guarded secret. During their 2 centuries of isolation, humans had evolved. The same adaptability that had helped them survive on hostile worlds had produced changes that even humanity's leaders barely understood. Some humans had developed abilities that the Empire considered impossible. As the Empire fleet prepared to attack, Jiwan reached out with her mind and touched the consciousness of every Empire soldier in the system. What they felt was not pain or fear, but something far more devastating, the absolute certainty that they could not win. Empire crews began abandoning their ships. Entire fleets surrendered without firing a shot. Within hours, 2,000 warships had fallen to a single human woman who never left the surface of the planet. The psychological warfare was just as effective as the technological superiority. Across the galaxy, Empire forces began to understand that they were fighting an enemy that had surpassed them in every possible way. Morale collapsed as word spread that humans could disable their weapons, penetrate their defenses, and even influence their thoughts. The Empire's ancient client species watched these events with growing excitement. Races that had been enslaved for millennia began to see hope for the first time. If humanity could challenge the Empire so effectively, perhaps freedom was possible after all. On the world of Arcturus Prime, the reptilian saurians rose in rebellion, inspired by humanity's example. The insectoid Threx declared independence from Empire rule. The aquatic Delphians began attacking Empire shipping in their home systems. What had begun as a human uprising was becoming a galaxy-wide revolution. In her strategic center on Luna, Tactical Coordinator Mina monitored the expanding conflict with satisfaction. Every calculation had been correct. Every prediction had come to pass. The Empire was not just losing the war, it was collapsing from within. "Status report," she requested from her aide. 47% of Empire territory is now in open revolt, came the reply. Their remaining fleets are scattered and demoralized. Intelligence estimates they have lost effective control of over 8,000 systems in the past week. Min-Ah allowed herself a small smile. And our casualties? Minimal. Fewer than 1,000 personnel lost across all theaters. It was unprecedented in galactic history. An empire that had ruled for 10 millennia was being dismantled by a species they had considered primitive, and they were accomplishing it with almost no losses of their own. The Empire's leadership, safely hidden in their fortress capital, finally began to understand the magnitude of their miscalculation. They had not just underestimated humanity's military capability. They had completely failed to grasp that humans fought wars differently than any species the Empire had encountered before. Where other species relied on brute force, humans used intelligence. Where others sought to dominate through fear, humans inspired others to fight for freedom. Where others accepted that war meant massive casualties, humans had developed technologies and tactics that made victory almost bloodless. The galaxy was learning that when humanity went to war, they didn't just win, they transformed the very nature of conflict itself. As Empire resistance crumbled across the galaxy, one question remained. What would humanity do with their overwhelming victory? The imperial capital of Vorthak fell without a single shot being fired. When the human fleet arrived at the Empire's heart world, they found the planet's defenses already shut down. The orbital weapons platforms hung silent in space, their crews having abandoned them days earlier. The mighty Imperial Guard, once the most feared military force in the galaxy, had simply walked away from their posts. Seung-ho, Earth's newly appointed galactic ambassador, stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Harmony as it descended, through Vorthak's atmosphere. Below him, the massive imperial palace sprawled across thousands of acres, its ancient towers reaching toward the sky like the claws of a dying beast. "The Imperial Council is waiting in the main throne room," his aide reported. "They've agreed to unconditional surrender." The throne room had witnessed the submission of countless species over the millennia. Kings, queens, presidents, and emperors had knelt before the imperial throne, accepting their people's slavery in exchange for their own lives. Now, for the first time in galactic history, it was the Empire that would surrender. Chancellor Vexthor, who had declared war on humanity just 2 weeks earlier, sat slumped on the crystal throne that had been the symbol of galactic oppression for 10,000 years. Around him, the surviving members of the Imperial Council stood with their heads bowed, their once proud bearing broken by complete defeat. "Ambassador Seung-ho," the Chancellor said, his voice barely above a whisper, "we surrender. The Empire yields to the Terran Republic and begs for mercy." Seung-ho walked slowly across the polished floor, his footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. When he reached the base of the throne, he looked up at the beings who had once ruled the galaxy through fear and oppression. "The war is over," he said simply. "But what comes next will be decided not by revenge, but by justice." The galaxy watched as Seung-ho delivered humanity's terms for peace. There would be no mass executions, No destruction of empire worlds, no enslavement of the species that had oppressed humanity for centuries. Instead, the Terran Republic proposed something that had never existed in galactic history, a true democracy where every species had an equal voice. The Galactic Empire dies today, Shung Ho announced in a broadcast that reached every world in known space. In its place, we offer the Terran Commonwealth, a voluntary association of free worlds where no species rules over another. On distant worlds, billions of beings who had lived their entire lives under Empire rule listened in amazement. Freedom was being offered not as a reward for rebellion, but as a gift to all who wanted it. The practical work of transforming a galaxy fell to people like Yu Jin, a former prosecutor who now headed the War Crimes Investigation Office. Her job was to separate those who had committed genuine atrocities from those who had simply followed orders under an oppressive system. The trials were swift but fair. Empire officials who had ordered massacres or authorized slave labor faced justice. But ordinary soldiers and bureaucrats who had simply done their jobs were offered amnesty in exchange for helping rebuild what they had helped destroy. Vengeance creates only more suffering, Eugene explained to a gathering of former Empire prisoners. Justice creates the possibility of healing. The most ambitious project was led by Chang Min, director of the Galactic Reconstruction Initiative. His task was to rebuild the infrastructure of thousands of worlds that had been stripped bare by Empire resource extraction. Human technology, freely shared for the first time, began transforming dead mining worlds into gardens. On Kepler 442b, Taemin watched in amazement as human terraforming equipment turned the red wasteland into fertile soil. The mining scars were filling with water, creating lakes and rivers. Seeds from Earth were taking root in soil that had been barren for generations. "My children will see trees here," he told So Young as they watched the transformation. Real trees, not just pictures on a screen. So Young nodded, then pointed to the construction crews working on the horizon. "And they'll attend universities here too. We're building research centers on every former colony world." The Empire's former slave species were the most eager to join the Terran Commonwealth. The Saurians, who had been used as manual laborers, brought their incredible strength to construction projects across the galaxy. The Threx, former factory workers, revealed artistic abilities that had been suppressed for centuries. The Delphians shared their knowledge of ocean worlds and deep space navigation, but the most surprising applications to join came from species that had been part of the Empire's ruling class. The Altarians, who had served as administrators, offered their organizational skills to help establish democratic governments. The Vegans, former military officers, requested permission to serve in the Commonwealth's peacekeeping forces. "They're afraid," Dongwu observed during a Commonwealth Council meeting. He had been elected to represent the former mining worlds, his years of organizing workers making him a natural leader. "They think we'll treat them the way they treated others." "Then we'll prove them wrong," replied Hye Jin, who now served as the Commonwealth's Director of Communications. "We'll show them that democracy means everyone has value, even former enemies." Not every world chose to join the Commonwealth. Some species preferred independence, establishing their own governments on their homeworlds. Humanity respected their choices, offering trade agreements and mutual defense pacts to any who wanted them. The Commonwealth's military, led by former human officers, operated under principles that would have seemed impossible under the Empire. Their primary mission was protection, not conquest. When conflicts arose between member worlds, Commonwealth forces served as peacekeepers, helping negotiate solutions rather than imposing them by force. Admiral Sang Woo, now head of Commonwealth. Defense often reflected on how different this was from traditional military service. "We're not warriors anymore," he told his staff. "We're gardeners, helping peace grow where there was once only war." The transformation wasn't without challenges. Some former Empire species struggled to adapt to freedom, having known nothing but hierarchy and obedience for millennia. Others chafed at democratic decision-making, preferring the efficiency of authoritarian rule. But humanity had learned patience during their centuries of preparation. They provided teachers and advisors to any world that requested help, sharing not just technology, but the harder lessons of governance and cooperation. 25 years after the Empire's fall, young historian Subin stood in the great library of Vorthak, writing the definitive account of humanity's rise. The former imperial palace had been converted into a center of learning, its throne room now a lecture hall where students from across the galaxy studied together. The galaxy expected humanity to become the new empire, she wrote in her conclusion. They expected us to rule through strength, to demand tribute, to treat other species as we had been treated. Instead, we chose to prove that there was a better way. Through the library's windows, she could see the city beyond, no longer the dark fortress it had been under imperial rule. Gardens grew where military barracks once stood. Children of a dozen different species played together in parks that had once been weapons factories. The air was clean, the water pure, the people free. Subin closed her manuscript and smiled. The title was perfect. The Species That Refused to Rule. How Humanity Saved the Galaxy by Saving Itself. Outside, the twin sons of Vorthak sat behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. It was the same sky that had once looked down on a galaxy enslaved, but now it watched over worlds where every being could choose their own destiny. In the distance, a human transport ship lifted off from the spaceport, carrying teachers and medical supplies to a newly independent world that had requested assistance. Its hull bore the symbol of the Terran Commonwealth, not a conquering eagle or a grasping claw, but a simple circle representing the equality of all who chose to stand within it. The galaxy had learned that when humanity finally revealed its true strength, that strength lay not in the power to destroy, but in the wisdom to build something better from the ruins of what came before. And in that wisdom, the galaxy had found its salvation.